Okay, so let's just look at our second step. We have now, if we hit the play button, we're going to see that the spawn manager has some items fall down on our stage and the items move towards our character. So that was for step one. We added some items into our spawn manager, and our spawn manager now spawns items and they roll towards our character. So now when they come towards our character, well, we need to have something happen. So the best part is that in Unity, we can use code to make something happen either through a key input or say a mouse click. We're going to have some items happen to maybe make our character respond and maybe jump up and over. And then maybe if they clear the item, the game continues on, or we might be able to carry forward later on and having some actual other elements add into the scene. So let's just get started for step two. So I said spawn manager in step one was a script that was added to be able to have items show up on our scene, and those items we can keep adding as long as those items have basically a rigid body added to them. And if they have a rigid body added to them, they're able to collide with objects, and they need to have this move object script. So just a reminder, if you forgot where items are, inside of the project setting, we have assets. And inside of the assets, we have folders. And there are more folders here. The main folders I said we're going to use for scripts. We're going to use prefabs, particle effects, and audio sources. And then we're going to do some animation adjustments. So we'll be able to see how we can adjust our character for different types of effects. So for this one, we need to change some of the items in our zombie idle. So if we select our zombie idle inside the hierarchy, you're going to see that that's our zombie right now. It has the green box around it. Inside of the inspector panel, you know that we have all of these items like a rigid body and a mesh collider and a box collider. Those are necessary. Some of the other items you're going to see there's an audio source that's been added to our character. Audio source has been added. And with that inside of our script, you're going to see that there is an actual jump sound here and an end sound and a hit block sound. And we're going to need to populate these using some of the folder assets. And the folder asset inside of our audio source has some sounds that have been uploaded to our Unity project. And you can upload your own sounds if you wanted to. These sounds you can upload. All you'd have to do is you could find, say, free sounds that are on the internet that might be game sounds, or you could download any WAV file or an MP3 file, and then you can just drag and drop those sound files right into this audio source panel. But for now, you have 4 examples here, and we're going to use these sounds inside of our zombie idle character with that audio source panel open here in the assets panel. You're going to be able to drag those sounds into these fields. So jump sound is going to be retro jump, and just click with your left mouse button and drag it into retro jump. And then you're going to have retro dyne. That's the end sound. So when our game ends, that's going to be the game end sound. And there's a retro block. That's the hit block sound that we're going to add into there. And those are now sounds that have been added to our script. And inside of our script, that's all been done for us. But we can look inside of the scripts folder, and you can open up this YBot walk controller. And that's YBot walk controller, which will show up like this inside of our Visual Studio. And inside of Visual Studio, you're going to see here that we have these sounds that have been added. We have an audio source for play audio. We have an audio clip end sound, and an audio clip hit block sound. And inside of our script on the awake, which happens before the game starts, it's going to call to this audio player, and it's going to find the audio sources that we've stored inside those folders, inside of the fields that we have inside of our script. It's going to find those audio sources, and then where we told them to play, it's going to play them. So we're basically going to go through and then play those sounds. So the next part is going to be going through the audio sounds get called on, say, a collision. So inside of this other function called on collision, it says if there's a collision and it happens to run into an object that is labeled with a tag called ground, it's going to play the splatter, or it's going to play the explosion, or it's going to play the audio sound right here, end sound. So now that you have those items added, or you know where they're located inside of our script, let's add them to our given character for the sound that's going to play during the game. So the sounds that affect our actual character are inside of this YBot controller. But let's say you wanted to have a sound that was playing in the background while the game was running from the beginning of the game, not when you collide with something. So these jump sounds are only going to work when we press down the keyboard button. For the spacebar, or the end sound is only going to work when they run into an object for the collision on collision. But let's say you wanted to add a sound to the actual game as it's playing. That would be the easiest location would be in our main camera. So inside of our main camera, you would have to click on the main camera, and in the inspector, you would need to add something called audio source. So just type in audio source and you'll see this audio source option shows up. And right there inside of the audio source option, you're going to find that you can add an actual audio clip. You can actually adjust the volume for that audio clip, how loud it is. You can have it set so it plays on a loop, so it's going to play all the time, even if it's just a small, short video arcade game background sound. Maybe you just put it on loop and it'll play over and over, and it's going to play on awake. So as soon as the on awake happens inside the script, it's going to play this given sound. And you can add that sound again from our audio source folder. So main camera, add audio source from your component list, and then you're going to drag in this background sound right here into this audio clip. And now if we hit save, Control S on our keyboard, and we hit play, now we're going to see a little bit different game that's playing in our background. So now there's sound that's playing, and if I press the space bar inside of my game, my character is going to be able to also jump, and that's going to be then play the sound that I have in the sound for my character. Okay, so that was adding sound and audio. So the next step will be just to add some of our given effects to our character. And that's going to be done by going back to our zombie idle character. Scroll down to the bottom again inside of our script. We said we have this explosion effect and this splatter effect. We need to add those to our character. So inside of that script, it's been added where we have these fields, and we can add our actual effects by going to the particle effects folder inside of our assets folder. So inside of the assets folder, you'll see that there is the particle effects folder, and I just shrunk down that size right there by changing the size so you could read this particle effects. If I click on that, there's going to be an explosion and a splatter effect that are going to be used. Now, before, when we were doing the spawn manager, we dragged our items into the open fields from our assets folder. But for our actual effects on our zombie, since this effect is going to be already attached as something that is a attached child to our character, we're not going to drag them from this particle effects folder. We're going to drag them from the actual zombie idle character. Right here it says there's a splatter and an explosion, and those can be dragged with your left mouse button. You're going to click and drag splatter into the non-particle system. Now you see it says splatter, and again I'm going to drag the explosion from the zombie all the way down into the explosion under the given explosion field that I've added to this script. And if you didn't see that, it's underneath the zombie idol, underneath the splatter and explosion, which are again added as children to this character's body. So now if you hit play, you should be able to now interact with your scene. And when you're playing, if you hit spacebar, you can see that now it's going to jump. Every time I hit the spacebar, it's going to jump. And you can see that now the animation changes from running to jumping, and now running to jumping. And lastly, if we hit something and our character falls down. So there we go. That is our working game that started off with just a moving background. Now we've added some elements, and now the character is able to jump. So the next thing we're going to be able to see is how can we change some of the effects if you want to have a different animation on your character, because right now your animation on your character is linked through your animator. And the next part is we're going to look at how we can set up our animator to do different animations and have different states, which are either going to be a trigger or a bool for a true or false. So that'll be next.